In this video, I want to talk to you about one thing that I've done for over a decade now, and I continue to do it every single year because of the impact it has on my life. I think it's really valuable. I'm super passionate about it. And if you did this one thing, I think it could have a really big impact on your life as well. And that one thing is the creation of and the implementation of a capture system. And what I mean by capture system is the capture of things in your life. So that could be tasks, ideas, thoughts, notes. It's a system for how those things are captured, so you don't end up with ideas that you've completely forgotten, or thoughts that you never really thought deeply about, or things that you heard that you never were able to take any further because you didn't capture them. And I think of it a bit like a fire. And imagine a massive roaring fire, and a capture system is a bit like a collection of wood that you're putting in place, and it's not lit up yet. There's nothing happening with it yet, but as you put the wood there, you're gathering the raw material, and then you can do something with that. So what I want to do in this video is talk through why I think a capture system is so valuable. What is a capture system? So I talked a little bit about that. What are the types of things you could capture? The tools, so thinking about the types of tools you might want to use to create this capture system, and then talk about the system itself. So how do you take these different things and make them into a system? And then what I'm going to do is talk through my system. So what have I implemented over the years? And that has changed and evolved, and it still continues to change and evolve as I have different life experiences. So I've just recently moved from the UK to the US. I have 2 young kids. I have different things in place to help capture things in my life, and that will change over time. So I want to talk through what is my capture system. So you've got a really worked example. You can see what it looks like in practice. Before we start, don't get too intimidated by what you then do with any of that material. Like I said, think of it like putting the wood in place. You don't have to worry about what the fire is going to look like, how to manage that fire, how to think about how to grow it, or anything like that. All you're doing is putting logs on the ground. So don't think or don't get too intimidated by what then happens next. All we're doing now is just thinking about how do you establish this, how do you create this system, and how do you then implement it into your life. And if you are interested in those other steps, so if you are interested in, well, what do I do with this after I put it into effect, then please subscribe to this channel, because what I'm planning to do is to then create more videos that then talk through that. And once I've created those, I'll link those up here so you can see them. But the idea is to create more videos to show you what do you do with this once you created it. And that's where you get the real value from it. But if you don't get that raw material in place, you can't do any of that stuff. So this is the place to start. Okay, so why create a capture system? So I'm going to kind of talk through 4 different areas that I think is really why I think this is so valuable. And the first is the ability to look back and see things that then give you strength going forward. Really, a capture system allows you to look back into your life, into your past, and see things you've done, ideas you've had, thoughts you've had, a whole variety of different things. And to be able to see that and it not be some kind of, conceptual thing, but to actually have something to look back at. And I think that creates such power, because it allows you to take the truth and the kind of values from that and pull those forward into your present, into your future. So the first kind of reason I think this is so valuable and why I think it's so good to do is that it allows you to see where you've come from, allows you to see your journey. The next is that it gives you a level of depth that I think you don't have if you don't do this, because it causes you to really think deeply about things. So you're capturing things in your life, and that means you're not just letting things be surface level. Things have to start to become a little bit deeper, or they have the potential to become a lot deeper, because you can capture the surface level thing, but then once it's captured, it allows you to see it and allows you to go deeper into that thing. One of the main things I think this is so valuable to do is because it allows you to be a good steward. I don't want to be someone who, when I've been given a responsibility, I don't know how to steward that. And steward is a kind of interesting word. I looked it up in terms of the definition of it, but it means a person who looks after something, like watching a pot of stew is one of the definitions. So someone who's like, they're cooking and they're stewarding that stew. They're thinking, okay, I don't want this to burn. I'm looking after it. You're watching it. You're careful with it. You're observing it over time. Another part of the definition is an act of being responsible for something. So like a teacher is responsible to steward the children who are in their class. And I think stewardship is really important to actually, you've been given something that you're responsible for. So it might be you're married, you've been given this responsibility to be a husband or a wife. You've been given this responsibility to be a parent. How do you steward that effectively? And I think having a capture system in place helps you to be a good steward. And then finally, I think it allows you to expand on things and to have expansion in your life, because through capturing things at a seed form, you can allow them to grow. Again, another analogy is like thinking about you're nurturing a seed. So you're capturing the seeds and then you're helping them to grow and become something bigger. Again, if you never capture the seed, if you just let that seed kind of get brushed aside or be, a bird like eats it or something, then it will never become something. So I think of a capture system giving you the potential to expand, to expand on ideas, to build things up. And small ideas can become something much larger because you've actually captured them. So let's go straight into what are we capturing. So just to get really real about this. And in this video, I'm going to talk mostly about personal life, so about how to apply this in a personal context. So in your home life, in your family life, in your kind of personal kind of environment. But you could apply this at work as well. It will look slightly different. There'll be different types of priorities. I think it's really valuable to have something like this at work as well. But for this video, I'm going to talk mostly about personal things. So some of the examples of what this could be, right? So it could be tasks, reminders, ideas, things you've learned, so things that you're studying, quotes from books, quotes from things you've watched, things you've listened to. It could be like revelations you've had, like spiritual kind of inputs that you might receive. It could be notes from meetings, conferences, sessions that you've gone to, and this is where it could kind of blend into work environment as well. It could be song ideas or film ideas if you're kind of a creative person. It could be things you want to purchase, like it could be very practical like that. It could be gift ideas. It could be images, videos, podcasts. It might be things you want to read. So, the list could be fairly endless in some ways, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about capture. Like you're capturing all these different aspects of life, basically. So to give you some very specific examples or scenarios that this might look like. So maybe your wife sends you a link to something she really likes and you're like, I could buy that for her birthday, but her birthday's in 6 months' time. If you don't have anywhere to store that or capture that, then you will forget that unless you've got some crazy brain. So having a capture system allows you to actually, in 6 months' time, purchase that thing for her. You have an amazing idea for a book and you want to write it down, but you're in a car and you can't write it down. Or you wake up in the middle of the night with a revelation that could change the direction of your future, but it's dark and you need to be quiet. And all these scenarios, having a system for capture will allow you to capture those thoughts, ideas, revelations, comments from other people, and then find them again. And that brings me on to the next part, which is about the tools that you might use as part of this capture system. Now, the tools that you use are going to be specific to you, and you'll find the ones that are going to suit you best. But there's a couple of things worth considering, and I want to also just make it really clear that this could be a broad set of tools. So the couple of things are, you want to capture wherever you are and whenever you are, and then you also want to use tools that you'll actually use. There's no point creating this whole system digitally if actually you really love using a notebook and writing them down by hand. So if you're not into apps, don't use apps. Like, that's basically the point. It's like, find something that works for you. But to give you an idea of the types of tools or the range of tools that is within how you might capture, it could be tasks apps, note-taking apps, notebooks, note cards, whiteboards, scratch pads, sticky notes, voice notes, voice recorder. The list could go on and on, okay? But just to give you an idea of the breadth of tools that you could use. Okay, let's move on to creating the system. How do you create a capture system? So I think the first thing you need to do is identify what tools are right for you. So I would start by creating a list of where you go, what you do. So literally write it down. So I get up in the morning, I have some time in the house, I get in a car, I go to work, etc., etc., etc. Like, write it down. Think about what does your day look like? What does your week look like? Where do you spend your time? And then think about how that might impact your capture. So against those different things, so driving in the car, that might impact your capture by the fact that you can't write something down, right? So against each of those, just jot down thoughts about the impact that might have on your ability to capture in that scenario. And then think about another list of what do you like and what do you dislike in terms of tools. So are you an app person? Are you not an app person? Do you like notebooks? Do you like doing things analog? Or are you always on your laptop or your devices? And then make a decision really on what tools do you think you're going to use based upon those scenarios. So which ones kind of align with those different scenarios? So if you are kind of a very digital person, then it kind of makes sense to be in that app kind of world. You don't need to get too specific about the actual app that you'll use, but just think, okay, I need a note-taking app. I need a task app. And you're lining that up with the different scenarios that you might find yourself in. If you need some inspiration, some ideas about different tools that you could use, then I've created a video about the 12 tools that I'm using right now across work, life, and kind of in between. So take a look at that, and that might inspire you in terms of different tools that you might want to use. And then what I want you to do is to create a list of what type of content you're going to actually capture. So what are you capturing? And just think about the different things that you want to capture. So you might have never done this before, or you might have done it haphazardly before. But think, okay, I want to capture tasks that I need to do. I need to capture ideas that I've had. I am a musician, so I want to capture song ideas and melodies that I have. And go through and just think about the different things that you want to capture. And make a list of that, and then match those to the tool. So think about, okay, where will I capture this thing? So if I've got melody ideas, like, that's not really going to work in a task app, right? So match those different types of capture, those content, the what, to the tool. So you can start to see, okay, I'm going to use this tool for this thing. So for example, voice notes might not be ideal for capturing a task, or long form notes don't necessarily fit inside of a task management app, or whatever. So just think about where they might fit. What's the best tool for that type of content that you want to capture? You'll want to do a bit of exploring and looking at different tools that you might use. So you might need to get a notebook, or you might need to find an app that works well for you in terms of note-taking, or that kind of thing. So once you've kind of got a sense of that, the first thing I would do in each of those tools is create some kind of drop zone or an inbox. And this is really a place that you can just quickly drop anything. What you don't want to do is over-engineer this system so that you're trying to figure out, okay, what category does this fit into? Where do I put it? I would advise that the first thing you do is just create one space that you can use to drop everything. It doesn't need to be categorized, doesn't need to be tagged. You can just put it in there. When you know the kind of content that you're going to put into that thing anyway, it kind of already categorizes it, right? Because you're going to put a task in a task management app. You're going to put a melody idea into a voice note app. So you kind of know where it's going to go anyway, but that level of granularity of the next step, which you don't need to deal with right now, can get in the way of you capturing. So just having a drop zone, I call it a drop zone or an inbox or that kind of thing, is a really good way of just helping you capture things, because there's no barrier between you having the thought or having the idea, and actually then just capturing that. And then just start using it. Start exploring it, trying it out, building it out. Just use it and see what happens. And you'll very quickly realize what works and what doesn't work. So you'll realize, oh no, this is too complicated, or I've got too many different things. I need to simplify this down. Just start using it and see what happens, see what evolves. And that's kind of it, basically. In terms of building a capture system, what you really need to do is make sure that you have the right tools, you're using the right tools for your life, for your circumstances, for what your life looks like, for the different environments that you're in. And then you know what kinds of things you want to capture. So it might not be everything, but you know the things that you want to capture, and you know where you're going to capture them. And then within those tools, you have a very quick way of just dropping something in there, just landing something in. And I think of it in terms of how you iterate on it as like a container. This is another analogy. A container that you've built. So your capture system is a container. And as you start putting water in it, let's say you're pouring water in, that's your capture, you'll quickly realize if it starts to leak, right? You'll see, oh, there's this part that I'm trying to put in, but it doesn't work. It's kind of leaking everywhere. And you'll need to kind of just maybe readapt the container so that you can capture the material correctly. And if it doesn't work, just adapt it so you can fill it up. But you don't want to be a leaky vessel, so you want to be leak-free. So whatever you desire to capture, try and make a vessel that actually captures that and doesn't leak. Okay, so how do I do it? What's my system? So my system isn't foolproof yet. It's not perfect. I'm still working on it all the time, but just to give you a very practical example. So I have 5 parts of my capture system. So I have a note-taking app, I have a task app, I have a notebook, I have a voice note app, and I use content-specific apps for very, very specific things. So the first one that I use is Obsidian. And that's my note-taking app. So I use Obsidian for a variety of reasons. Again, this video that I recorded previously will tell you a bit more about why I use Obsidian. But inside of Obsidian, I have an inbox, and I've set Obsidian up so that when I create a new note, it automatically gets added into that folder, basically, in Obsidian. And what that means is that whenever I have an idea or I have a thought or I want to capture something, I don't need to think, okay, which folder do I put it in? I literally just press the button to create a new note, and I know it will go in the inbox, and I can catalog it later. So I'm not thinking about where does this go, or is it this kind of idea or this kind of idea, or is it this note or this thing? All I'm doing is creating a new note, and that just removes any barrier for me actually just writing something down. The other thing that I use a lot in Obsidian is their daily notes feature. And I've just recently discovered this daily note editor community plugin, which I really like because it gives you a linear kind of view of your daily notes. Daily notes, if you don't know, in Obsidian are basically a note tied to the date that you created them. So again, it's one-click button that you can click and it creates a note that's titled with that date of the day that you press that button. So I really like that because I basically don't name my notes anymore. I don't come up with titles for them. I just have the date as the title. So I can always go back and find things, and I can view things through that kind of date lens, which I really enjoy. My second part of my capture system is TickTick. So that's my task management app. And I use that to capture kind of very specific tasks that I have. So it really is where I do all my task stuff. I have an inbox again in there where I just dump things. I don't catalog things straight away. A lot of things just stay in my inbox and I go kind of through them. And I use kind of deadlines and dates against tasks to actually start to categorize. So I can then go into the ones that I have for today and they've been pulled from the inbox. And I don't really have to do any categorization. Again, I just prefer that because it means I don't have any barrier between me creating a task. Because I don't have to think about where it goes. But I do have some specific lists in there. So one is a content backlog, I call it, which is where I pull together all the things that I really like. So it could be videos, articles, images, podcast episodes. And I put those into that list, and they're in different Kanban lists in there. So I can just have a repository where I can put things that I'm inspired by, or that I want to look at later or read later or watch later. So it's a content backlog, I call it. And then I also have a store list, I call it, which is basically I have a category or a list for my wife, for me, for the family, and other. And it's where I can put things that I want to buy or purchase for myself or for other people in my kind of life. So I found that really useful because I can just put things in there when they come to mind. So for that scenario, in terms of a birthday gift or something, I have a list of things that I've been building up over time that I might want to purchase someone. And then I have a notebook, and I'm currently using the Nuna notebook. It's designed in Germany, and I really like this. It's really cool. It has like a really cool spine, very nice kind of dot grid effect, and lies flat and all those kind of things. And I have this with me at all times. It goes in my bag, and I use that basically just to capture things quickly. And if I need to, I'll then take photos of the page and put them into Obsidian to keep it within that environment. So Obsidian is kind of like my central location for everything. And these other things, well, the tasks kind of sit slightly separately, but other things get pulled into Obsidian. Another thing that gets pulled into Obsidian would be my voice notes. So I do take voice notes when I'm traveling. So I've got an Apple Watch, so I use the voice notes feature on that. So if I'm in the car or I'm traveling somewhere and I can't write something down, I'll use the voice notes feature to capture something. And then again, I might transcribe that, or I might just pull the audio file into Obsidian at another point. But again, that's down the line, so I'm not really thinking about that. I just need to have a way to capture it. So I use voice notes, and I am a musician as well, so I'll use that as a way to capture ideas for music as well. I have explored using Otter.ai, which is a voice memo app which transcribes as you record. So I have used that on occasion where I've wanted to get the text out of what I've written down or what I've spoken, so I can then add it into something else later. But voice notes app on the iPhone and on Apple Watch I found is really useful. And then I have two content-specific apps that I use as part of my overall system. So one is Letterboxd, which is a film kind of review tool, I guess, a bit like IMDb. And I use that to basically just log the films that I've watched over time and my kind of top 100, top 10 kind of lists that I enjoy putting together. And then I also use Goodreads for tracking the books that I've read, and also lists of my favorite books and that kind of thing. So I have very specific apps like that I use, again, to capture those types of things. And then finally, I use Apple Notes occasionally when I have to. So if I just need to get something really quickly down and I can't wait for Obsidian to load, or I don't have the time, or I don't know why I use it really. But I will use Apple Notes because it's just easy sometimes. And then later on, I'll copy that into something else. So that's my system really. So those 5 different things. So if I just go through this again, so I've got a note-taking app, which is Obsidian. I've got a task app, which I use TickTick. A notebook, I've got a Nuna notebook, a voice notes app, and then content-specific apps like Letterboxd and Goodreads. So that's my system, basically. That's how I manage it. And like I said, Obsidian is kind of like the central location for everything. But there's these different specific tools that I'm using to capture very specific things that work for me. I've found it really interesting recently, starting to see the impact of this. I've said at the start, like, that this can give you sight of things, right? It can actually give you the ability to look back and see things in your journey. So I think that's one of the biggest values, and the ability to steward things correctly, have depth, expand on things. I've found, particularly on my spiritual journey, I'm a Christian, that the ability to look back over a decade of notes about the things that I've been considering and that I've been tracking in that spiritual journey is incredibly powerful. And then I've also recently been linking it up with things like Notebook LM, which is a research tool that Google's brought out where you can upload PDFs into it. So just think about 10 years worth of Obsidian notes that you could export as PDFs, upload into Notebook LM, and then it's basically your own personal chatbot that you can talk to your own notes and kind of get insights about yourself. It's really interesting. So that's really cool. And then, I'll show you on screen an example of my graph view in Obsidian, which I just really enjoy because I can go back over time and look at things and see connections and highlight things. And it's just really exciting what can be done when you have this raw material. So I will go into, in future videos, all of that in terms of what you can use this for and the power of it and what it can lead to. So do subscribe if you're interested in continuing to watch that and learn about that. Okay, so what have we covered? We've covered why a capture system can be really valuable and why I personally think it's really valuable. What a capture system is, like what you're actually capturing, the tools that you might use to capture, the system, how you develop a system, and then we've talked through my system as well and what I specifically use. So my encouragement to you this year is to build a system that allows you to not let anything slip past you, to be a good steward for the things that you've been given responsibility for, to be able to look back and see the things that have happened in your life, to be able to see the things that you've learned, the ideas that you've had, to build a system that allows you to have depth and to really think and consider things deeply, and to allow you to expand on those ideas, to build on them, to become bigger than you started. So start to think about how you can build this in your life. And again, if you need inspiration for different tools that you can use, then I've created this video that can give you a bit of inspiration about the different tools that you might use to create a capture system. Thanks for watching.